Hi, and welcome to my presentation about the Cambridge Analytica and Facebook scandal. Here, I will make use of both Freud's The Uncanny and Heidegger's Questions Concerning Technology to analyze one of the bigger scandals of the past decade. Let me give you a quick recap of what exactly happened here. Back in 2018, a major political scandal was leaked by a whistleblower that had worked for Cambridge Analytica, a firm that used vast amounts of user data for political campaigning purposes. The whole company was literally built on user data from Facebook. Back in June 2014, a psychology professor at the University of Cambridge was approached by the firm to gather information for them about Facebook users. He accepted the offer and started building his own application, which let users take a personality survey that scraped private data from their profiles. The thing was that only 270,000 people participated in what they thought would be for academic use. However, the application did not just pull private information from these users, but also from their friends and friends of friends. Once this process was done, he had provided over 50 million profiles to put to use. Some news outlets had covered this back in 2015, but it did not take off too much. It was only up until early 2018 that a whistleblower from Cambridge Analytica itself came forward and accused Facebook of selling this sensitive data to his former firm, which Facebook had said they would never do. In the terms and conditions of Facebook, it was stated that the selling of personal data gathered by Facebook itself was prohibited. However, since Cambridge Analytica now possessed the data, it meant that it could be used to manipulate voter preference in the 2016 US elections. The important thing to notice here is that the Trump campaign had hired the firm in order to steer as many people towards Trump using all kinds of propaganda advertisements. Now that we know the general background of the scandal, we can go and take a further look into how exactly this relates to both the questions concerning technology as well as the uncanny. First of all, we need to understand the critique that Heidegger is giving on the New Age conception of what technology stands for and what it does to our worldview. On page 17 of the Questions Concerning Technology, Heidegger introduces the notion of the standing reserve. What kind of unconcealment is it then, that is peculiar to that which comes to stand forth through the setting upon the challenges? Everywhere, everything is ordered to stand by, to be immediately at hand, indeed to stand there, just so that it may be on call for further ordering. Whatever is ordered about this way has its own standing. We call it the standing reserve. Heidegger is trying to tell us here is that we have started to treat objects in nature, whatever they may be, as being some kind of resource on standby, especially once we have transformed it into that resource. And we do this through our use of modern technology. Later on, he argues the following. Only to the extent that man, for his part, is already challenged to exploit the energies of nature can his ordering revealing happen. If man is challenged, ordered to do this, then doesn't man himself belong even more originally than nature within the standing reserve? The current talk about human resources, about the supply of patients for a clinic, gives evidence of this. We have not only transformed our objects in the world as merely being standing reserve, but also our fellow human beings are now regarded as standing reserve. Some resource that you can use for your own benefit, a resource that can be used as a means to an end. Shortly, I will come back to this, how this is applied in the situation of Facebook. When Heidegger talks about the standing reserve, he also mentions another important concept, this being the following on page 20. Enframing means the gathering together of that setting upon which sets upon man, challenges him forth to reveal the real in the mode of ordering as standing reserve. What Heidegger means is that we as humans have become trapped in this mode of thinking. It is the enframing. This enframing, thinking that everything is there for you to use or to consume in any way, is a reason why we are challenging forth instead of bringing forth. When we are stuck in enframing, we are viewing the world as standing reserve. Now back to Facebook. What is happening at Facebook? It is a reflection of what Heidegger has warned us against. It is the conversion of its user base, which consists of humans, into a standing reserve. The individual has been transformed into a resource, and the resource is a quite profitable one as well. It is a profile of who they are, their own traits, their personality, captured in numbers and strings. This reserve translates itself into profit and endangers even a democracy, as we have seen during the 2016 US elections. Now, before we can link the uncanny to the Cambridge Analytica scandal, we first have to re-specify our meaning of what the uncanny is. Let me explain why. Here we have some passage of Freud's uncanny. It goes as follows. An uncanny experience occurs either when repressed infantile complexes have been revived by some impression, or when the primitive beliefs we have surmounted seem once more to be confirmed. These descriptions are rather hard to use for real-life situations like the one we're talking about right now. And there's a reason for this, and this reason can be found near the end of Freud's text. One thing we may observe which may help us resolve these uncertainties. Nearly all the instances which contradict our hypothesis are taken from the realm of fiction and literary productions. This may suggest a possible differentiation between the uncanny that is actually experienced and the uncanny as we merely picture it or read about it. Something uncanny in real-life experience is conditioned much more simply, but is limited to much fewer occasions. We shall think, I think, that it fits perfectly with our attempt at solution and can be traced back without exception to something familiar that has been repressed. Most of Freud's examples of the uncanny are fictitious ones. They occur in stories that could not occur in real life, like a doll that comes to life. He also states that when we actually rate most of these fictitious moments, we actually do not in the slightest find them uncanny while they happen in the stories. But we need a description for real-life uncanny moments. Thus, perhaps we should use the one that is mentioned at the very end of this passage, namely, something familiar that has been repressed. Now, this might seem like a bit of a stretch, but we could transform the meanings of these words into such a way that we could perhaps apply this meaning to a situation with Facebook. In a sense, our own data, which is familiar to us, has been repressed by Facebook at least for a while. This data should not have come to light, but nonetheless has. It has come to light via the illegal setting to a third party. When we found out as users, surely this gave us some feeling of uncanniness, a feeling that something that was our own, something that should not have been shown to others, had actually been shown and now it has turned against us. That thing that was so familiar to us, but was kept in concealment, has come out. And the uncanny feeling therefore comes from where we found out that it was misused as well, that our own traits were suddenly there for others to see, to consume and to use as standing reserve. Lastly, how can we make sure that a company like Facebook brings forth instead of challenging forth? How can it get rid of enframing, where it views its users as being merely standing reserve? How can we make sure that we do not have to experience these eerie, uncanny moments anymore that endanger our relationship with technology and companies that employ it? This question is extremely hard to answer, and many have tried so. It is almost a wicked problem. A single solution cannot directly be found, at least not right now. In an age where the gap between poor and rich widens to new extremes, where technology advances with exponential speeds, bringing forth with dignity will be one of the hardest challenges for tech companies to achieve. Thanks for listening.